I promised you Adam Klasfeld. He is the Law and Crime News managing editor. He has been in the courthouse and sometimes in the courtroom in the case of Ghislaine Maxwell. Adam, welcome. And what is happening in that courtroom? Is Jane, the leadoff witness, still on the stand? And what has the prosecution done? And is defense cross-examining her?
Yes, well, the defense is cross-examining her right now. We're on day 2 of Jane's testimony. And in pretty explosive testimony, grueling testimony on day 1, Jane testified that both Ghislaine and Jeffrey Epstein sexually abused her when at the age of 14. We're now on cross-examination, and there are a couple of headlines here. One, during cross-examination, the defense attorney asked her whether she said Jeffrey Epstein introduced her to Donald Trump. She said yes. She also asked whether she had ever seen Prince Andrew on a flight. She said yes again. Now, there were no accusations about wrongdoing with either of these two men, but of course, the ties to Epstein have been a matter of public interest, so that remark got a lot of attention. But again, there are no accusations against them. Another headline is that the defense is doing what they promised to be doing from the beginning of the case. They're trying to undermine the memory of the women who are stepping forward against their client. We have to remember the case is about allegations that stem between the years 1995 and 2004. So the defense strategy here is at every turn when the women go forward, and this is one of the marquee witnesses, they're going to try to poke holes in it here by comparing what she said on the witness stand to notes of interviews that may or may not be accurate with the government, and suggesting that her story has evolved, trying to attack her as financially motivated because she collected a settlement with the Jeffrey Epstein Victims Compensation Fund. So we're in the middle of cross-examination. It's getting heated, and it's bringing out a lot of big notable names.
Yeah. Adam, Jane, is she the most important government witness and obviously she's leading off, but how many times did she say that Jeffrey Epstein sexually abused her? But more importantly, how many times did she point to Ghislaine Maxwell knowing about the abuse?
So there are numerous categories of Jane's allegations. As to the importance of her as a government witness, she's very important. The very first words out of the prosecutor's mouth during opening statements was, I want to tell you a story of a girl named Jane, that she was a 14-year-old whose story led off this case. So her allegations against Epstein and against Maxwell generally break down into a number of categories. With Maxwell, there are grooming allegations that Maxwell allegedly normalized the process of sexual abuse by Jeffrey Epstein. Then there's another category of allegations that she was present in the room where sexual abuse happened. But there's another category of alleging that Ghislaine Maxwell herself fondled her breast. So that goes to the prosecution's allegations that Ghislaine Maxwell wasn't only the person facilitating someone else's abuse, that in certain instances, the prosecution claims she was the abuser. And that's what the defense is trying to undercut, because if the prosecution can show direct abuse and the jury believes that Ghislaine Maxwell participated in abuse, then it's going to be much harder for Ghislaine Maxwell to argue, oh, she didn't know what was going on with Epstein. And we heard on day 1 from Jeffrey Epstein's pilot called Ghislaine Maxwell essentially Epstein's number 2.
Yeah. Now, let me ask you this. Any word on how the jury is taking these explosive allegations, both the sexploitation allegations that have been leveled against Maxwell in concert with Epstein, and the allegations that you just heard that she was being introduced to high-power people such as Donald Trump and Prince Andrew?
Well, one thing to make clear about court proceedings during the age of COVID-19, the jurors are behind masks. So it's kind of hard to discern the reactions to a lot of what's unfolding in court. But one thing that was notable is looking at how Ghislaine Maxwell is reacting to certain things. For months, we've been, and perhaps even years, we've been hearing allegations from her lawyers that she's being horribly mistreated in a Brooklyn federal prison, Brooklyn federal jail. And she appears in court looking very alert, very lively, very engaging in her defense, apparently very healthy. The first witness to take the stand, as I mentioned earlier, was Jeffrey Epstein's pilot. And during one remark, there seemed to be a rapport between her and the witness as he was talking about. Now, I need to take a small step back here. The first witness, the pilot, claims he didn't observe anything untoward happening. So for Maxwell, it almost seemed like a trip down memory lane. At one point, the pilot said something to the effect that Ghislaine likes her shopping. And it almost seemed that Ghislaine Maxwell was chuckling underneath her mask. And in the background, there's a little bit of a car passing by. Sorry about the background noise. But there are those moments that kind of undermine things that we've been hearing for months from the defense team about the squalor that she's been in, the state that she's been in before, in the lead up to trial.
How about the victim here? In the court, I would note, is allowing these women to be called victims, unlike in the Kyle Rittenhouse case where decedents could not be called victims. How is Jane reacting, both on the stand to the recounting of the sexual abuse and the defense attorney's cross-examination, which I'm sure is going to get, if not already has been, pretty brutal?
Absolutely. Well, what happened yesterday, her voice cracked on numerous occasions, visibly kind of holding back emotion when she's describing the abuse and on the witness stand. And today, during cross-examination, you can hear the frustration in her voice as the defense attorney is systematically trying to poke inconsistencies between what she said on the witness stand today and her memories as these events unfolded, as what she was said to have told authorities just a couple of years ago. So there's definitely frustration heard in the witness's voice. Yesterday, a lot of emotion as she spoke about these events. So that is what, and it's still going on. We're on a lunch recess, and it's certainly going to remain emotional as these proceedings continue.
Let me ask you one other question. Aside from calling Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein, having Jeffrey Epstein being her James Bond, did the defense try to in any way, even though they have no obligation, explain that relationship or try to attack the government's case by saying she would have no reason to do this because she would be a wealthy woman herself? She wouldn't need to be a procurer of sexual items for, these sexual items would be young children, for Jeffrey Epstein and his ilk?
Well, there's one interesting, I'm going to the earlier part of the question. They seem to be systematically trying to call into question things that are properly understood or previously understood about Ghislaine Maxwell. I'll give you an example. During the first witness, the pilot's testimony, the pilot was asked by the prosecutor how long Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell appeared to be in a romantic relationship, and you heard the pilot essentially pushing back on the idea that they had a romantic relationship. He said they were more couple-ish, and so that they are trying to call into question her proximity to Jeffrey Epstein. They are trying to, the first line out of the defense, I mentioned earlier the first line out of the prosecution opening statement. The first line out of the defense opening statement was, ever since Eve was said to have tempted Adam with the apple, women have been blamed for the misdeeds of men. So they're trying to depict her as a lightning rod for Jeffrey Epstein because Jeffrey Epstein was found dead in his jail cell. And so they're trying to distance her from Epstein in many ways.
Adam, I've asked you a lot of questions, and I know you are a fountain of information here. Is there anything else you would like to tell our viewers about what's happening in that courtroom today before I sign you off?
Well, this testimony is ongoing. We're going to hear next from someone associated with Jane, who is also being anonymized by the name Matt. And we'll be covering the entire thing from gavel to gavel as this unfolds. One more thing to understand, just to contextualize the witnesses who are stepping forward, she's the first of 4. We're going to likely hear from 3 others. There were 4 people listed as minor victims in the indictment under that broad umbrella. One of them is not anonymous and will be testifying under her identity, and that's Annie Farmer. So there's a lot more to come.
Wow. Well, Adam, I know you have to get some lunch and get back into that courtroom. Thank you very much for that complete report of what's happening in the Brooklyn Federal Court. And someday, hopefully, there'll be cameras in the courtroom. But until then, I think you're better. You may be even better, or certainly close there, too. Thanks, Adam Klasfeld.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And you know what? Before we get to discuss this, we're going to take a quick break here at the Law&Crime Network and let us all think about this case and the other cases we're covering. When we come back, we'll talk about the William R.G. case that's also going on in New Hampshire involving a murder. But certainly this case deserves a lot of attention, even though there are not cameras in the courtroom. That's the Ghislaine Maxwell case. Stay with us. We're the Law&Crime Network.
Hi, this is Dan Abrams with exciting news for all of our Law&Crime followers on YouTube. You can now get the live Law&Crime Network with YouTube TV for all of your daily live trial coverage, legal news, expert analysis, and original true crime programs. Subscribe to YouTube TV today and then locate Law&Crime in the channel guide. And for only $1.99 a month, you can add the network to your bundle. Watch Law&Crime every day with YouTube TV. We put you in the jury box.